Most of it has been brought here by a container ship.
One of the most important trade lanes connects Asia with Europe. It's a highly lucrative maritime superhighway, accounting for a staggering $316 billion worth of business. To maximise the revenue from this critical route, Maersk Line are about to build their biggest ship yet. The Triple-E. At 400 metres long, the Triple-E will be the world's biggest ship. A steel leviathan, powered by two enormous engines, each capable of delivering more than 40,000 horsepower. Enough power to carry 18,000 fully laden containers at a steady 16 knots halfway around the world. This is where the Triple-E is being conceived. Maersk's headquarters in Copenhagen. The design genius behind her is naval architect Troels Posberg.
I've been involved in these vessels from the start, so of course the vessels is part of me and I'm part of the vessel. So it has come to the stage where all our desktop exercises now become real.
Despite Denmark's shipbuilding heritage, the company have decided not to build the Triple-E on home turf. Instead, she will be constructed here, in Okpo, South Korea, at one of the world's largest and most advanced shipyards, owned by construction giants DSME. More than 40,000 workers churn out over 70 ships a year here.
0.144, very good.
But building the Triple-E will test even their skills.
No, we're not planning just to build one ship. We are planning to build 20 ships. The first vessel in such a series is the biggest challenge. It's an enormous investment, and we need to make sure that it really pays off in the end.
To do so, Maersk are sending an elite team of engineers to join forces with the South Koreans.
We need to divide two teams, port and starboard.
Their task, to build the first Triple-E ship in just 38 weeks. Troels is eyes and ears on the ground. The man who must make sure the yard deliver in time.
Holy shit, it's cold out here.
Is site manager Søren Arnberg. Søren has built more than 450 ships in a career spanning 25 years. His team will be checking the yard builds the Triple-E to their precise specifications.
In the end, it's a combination or the cooperation between us and the yard. No doubt about that. The first vessel in the series, we definitely not afford is being delayed. Otherwise, they'll put my neck in somewhere. It's not that nice to be. Yes.
To get the job done in time, Søren expects complete cooperation.
Can you see this one? Serious, not cool.
Even if it takes some unorthodox management techniques.
I got it from a friend in Copenhagen. Sometimes I'm very bad-tempered, so he found it was good to have something I could react on. And then he sent me the ďÓNG so I could place the good needles in the person I was not completely satisfied with. It has worked so far, I would say. Except for my wife. It's not working when I'm using her for her. Yeah, I've previously had a reputation, yes, for being very strict and very hard. But I think I have eased a little when I'm getting older, so now I consider myself as a pleasant person.
first stage of this gargantuan build, assemble the EE's huge hull. The structure around which the rest of the ship will be built. Building the hull will use more than 50,000 tons of steel. Working alongside Soren to make sure all goes to plan is fellow Dane Peter Bertelsen.
This is the biggest hull on any container vessel ever. We also have to make sure that we're getting it right, because we only have one try. First inside.
In his career, Peter has built some 40 ships, but nothing on this scale.
There's a certain amount of pressure to get things right, because there's a certain amount of publicity around these vessels, so they have to be correct and they have to be delivered on time.
To assemble the hull as fast as possible, Peter's team is using an ingenious technique. In the past, ships were built from the bottom up, a bit like building a house. But this method was extremely slow. So workers are building the EE's hull from end to end, using 24 prefabricated sections called mega blocks that are welded together. It takes 2,200 tons of steel to erect each mega block.
The reason for mega blocks is it's to reduce the time we use in a dock, because that's the biggest time constraint.
The first block needs to be in place in the dock in just 5 weeks' time. To cut this much metal this fast, they're firing up a unique machine. The plasma steel cutter. It uses gas, superheated to 16,000 degrees centigrade, to melt metal in milliseconds.
It is a big day. It's the very beginning. Now it means that we are starting the ship now.
An army of robots welds the first block together.
Became bigger and bigger. And finally, they can make mega blocks.
After 5 weeks of extreme cutting and welding, the first enormous mega block is finally complete. Now the job of assembling the world's biggest ship can really get going. In Okpo, South Korea, there are just 33 weeks left to finish the world's biggest ship, before she sets sail on her maiden voyage. The team building the record-breaking EEE are about to move the first piece of her huge hull into dry dock number 2. This is a key moment, a milestone known as keel laying.
The first keel, when you put that for the first new series, that's a new beginning. That's a new, now we are getting on. Now we are from block stage, now we're into dock stage, now we are assembling the vessel, we can see something happening, really happening. Now we're gonna see the vessel is getting bigger and bigger.
Okay, thank you.
It's a big day, so Peter and the rest of the team are fueling up.
I think they have the big moving day today, and it took like half an hour to get out there.
These guys who are transporting the blocks, they get bored. Let's move some blocks. And then they start moving from one end to another just for fun. They've been laying here for too long, they just got a little rust along the quayside. No good. Start moving. Or maybe they just move the blocks so they make sure that the guys on the bicycle get some exercise. That could be also.
The block they need to lift into place soars over 30 meters high, as tall as a 10-story apartment building. It will sit just in front of the engine room.
It's enormous.
Dock 2 is surrounded by water, so it can be easily flooded to launch the ship once complete. To reach the dock, The block needs hauling from the quay. Special type of crane. One that floats. Mounted on a pontoon, this monster can lift up to 3,600 tons.
아니 잠깐만.
Its captain is Oh Sung-jin.
우리가 바다니까 바람이 제일 영향 많이 받거든. 물건이 높다 보니까 크다 보니까 바람이 이 배가 힘을 못 써요. 우연에 사람 있나?
One moment of carelessness, and the giant hull section could end up at the bottom of the harbour. But Captain Oh also faces another challenge. Each block weighs 2,200 tons. As it's lifted, there's a risk the block could tip the crane over. To prevent this, the crane has an ingenious system of ballast tanks inside. Just before the lift, Captain Oh's team fill the tanks with exactly the right amount of water to counterbalance the block. This causes the crane to tilt backwards until the block pulls at level. At which point, they can begin the move.
그런데 만약에 발라스트 기능이 없으면 배가 우리가 블럭을 인양을 했을 때 배가 앞으로 처박히지 않습니까? 그러면 안전상에 문제가 많죠.
노을이 있지 당연히.
Captain Oh's team begin filling the tanks.
10개.
Little by little, the rear end of the crane tips back.
5개.
As the crane starts to lift, the weight of the block pulls it level.
이번은 고가 타고 가고.
Now, Captain O can fire the crane's thrusters into reverse and ferry the block over to the dock.
자연해봐라.
It's getting slowly there.
동쪽으로 돌아가면 되겠습니다.
Tugboats push and pull the crane to keep it steady in the swell. Captain O hoists the block over the dock gate.
그러고 이번은 사람 2명만 지원 좀 해주세요. 저기 싫어하는 사람이 일단은 웃으리라. 그거 하고 우리하고 우리 여기서 현장을 안 보이니까 정확한 걸 원하거든요. 그래서 좀이라도 실수는 좀 허용이 안 되는 겁니다. 그냥 거의.
After a tense few hours, the mega block finally touches down inside the dock.
Please step forward.
The success of the move is an excuse for a proper, if very Korean, celebration.
For the rice cake, we will cut it in 4 pieces and then throw some of the rice cake into the hull, which means good luck for the vessel. It's the first time I've seen it normally with champagne, but here's rice cake appears to me. I prefer the champagne. The rice cake is a little too sticky for me. And now the real work will start here in the dry dock, building up the vessel. And we have a very, very busy time from now on.
With less than 33 weeks to go before the Triple-E's maiden voyage, the clock is ticking. Over the next 2 weeks, the team lifts 3 more massive blocks into Dock 2.
I tried to take some pictures to send home for the people in Denmark, so it's easier to take pictures and send home, so you can see the progress. It's anti-shake, yeah, for an old man, so that's very good.
But for all the progress, Soren worries that the project is falling behind schedule.
There should have been 5 rings in the dock, but we can only see 4. Another week before it's down, so we might be a week delayed.
With just 4 blocks in place, it seems that the goal of delivering the world's biggest ship on time and on budget is already under threat.
They'll probably roast my ass if I'm not getting these vessels delivered in time. As a boss for the team, I would take the blame, so...
Assembling the EE's hull from blocks might look straightforward. But an enormous amount of effort goes into ensuring that these components are built to the highest standards. One of the biggest headaches for the EE's designers is the threat posed to the ship's elongated hull by large waves. Fully loaded, ships like the EE can have up to 3 times their own weight in cargo, pushing down on the hull. These forces are magnified by the effect of waves hitting the ship. As the crest of a wave passes along the ship, it pushes it upwards, an effect known as hogging. As the trough of a wave passes along the hull, it sucks it down, causing it to sag. These forces, pushing and pulling on a ship, can be great enough to split its hull in 2. The EE's chief architect, Troels Posberg, is all too aware of the problem.
If you scale EE down to the same size as a beer can, then it's actually having a thinner shell than the beer can. The hull is exposed to a lot of different forces, and you need to design the vessel for that kind of extreme condition.
For this reason, the yard are building the EE's hull from steel, making it both strong and, crucially, flexible. It's Peter Bertelson's job to keep an eye on the quality of the 1,873 sheets they're using to construct the ship.
This is what I do for a living, bouncing. I should bring my son here, he'll probably love it. Steel has to be flexible. If it's too brittle, it will break in 2 and sink. If the steel is too stiff also, then it will also break, because then it cannot move at all, and then it will be torn apart.
This is where the ingredients for the EE's steel are being mixed. The POSCO steel mill, just north of the shipyard. It is the world's 5th largest steel maker, producing enough steel each year to manufacture around 40 million cars.
Actually, it needs a lot of skill to make this plate.
Here, workers heat, pound, and roll huge slabs of molten metal to create vast sheets. It's critical that the steel, an alloy of iron, contains just the right amount of carbon.
The strength can be different against by the carbon composition, but actually carbon is not the only thing. We also control magnesium or nickel and low sulfur.
Once cool, the factory transports the sheets to the yard for Peter to sign off.
They look good, no problem, good quality.
But as the steel piles up, the team somehow need to get the build back on schedule. For site manager Soren Arnberg, the delivery date for the first EEE is non-negotiable.
If they're not able to deliver on the 28th of June, then we have a serious situation with the Maersk line, because they will cost them a lot of money. If we're not getting what we want on Monday, that definitely certain persons will set up on my voodoo doll.
It's vital the yard find a way to get the project back on track and fast. South Korea, and in one of the world's largest shipyards, an extraordinary vessel is coming to life.
Even caught me was surprised how big it is. We only seen it on a drawing so far, so now we got the right scale of the vessel. I must admit, I'm also impressed with this huge construction we have.
With the ship's maiden voyage getting ever nearer, the build crew are behind schedule. To get things back on track, site manager Soren calls an emergency meeting with the yard's Korean production team.
Unfortunately, with big sadness, found out that you are behind schedule. Mr. Lee, you are behind schedule at the moment.
Behind schedule?
Yes, you are. This first vessel, there's not an option to delay the vessel. We had to be delivered, fully completed, and with everything on the 28th of June. We need to have your plan for catching up of the delay in the production, yes. Yes, yes. I think it's fairly easy to understand what we want. Otherwise, we have to spank you.
Luckily for the yard, the next phase of production promises to be a good deal quicker than the last. Until World War II, shipbuilders mainly used rivets to assemble the hulls of vessels. However, the rivets were unreliable and prone to popping. Today, the team building the EE's 400-metre-long hull is using a radically different approach. They are welding her 24 megablocks together using an ultra-thick bond called an erection joint. There will be over 5 kilometres of these joints in the hull. The task is enormous, and one that can't be rushed, or the welds could fail.
Once you have a crack in a weld, they don't stop, they start running. And then suddenly, that piece of structure is not as strong as it's supposed to be.
But the weather is against them.
So today, as you can see, we have a heavy rain. We want the welding joint to be clean and dry during the welding. So everybody should stop welding outside in unprotected area. We just have to wait until it stops.
After 3 days of heavy rain, the sky's clear, finally giving the yard the chance to catch up.
They have to make up for the lost time.
To weld the megablocks together by hand would take around 20 passes. So to speed things up, the crew use an army of welding robots.
It's a very fast method of welding, and that's why the yard are using it.
These electro-gas welding robots need just one pass on each joint. They melt the steel seams of the megablocks together in milliseconds, creating a watertight joint. Before Peter can sign off on the welds, they must undergo a series of tests.
The welding has to be perfect. The structure of the metal changes when you heat it again and again and again. So the weldings will always be the weakest point.
Workers weld Peter a test section for analysis.
So far the weld looks fine. There's no visible defects anywhere. But I need X-ray vision to make sure.
If the test section holds out, Peter can be satisfied that the real welds will also be strong enough.
We're going to go pull things apart and try to break them. That's always fun.
Inside the yard's lab, technicians subject the joint to a barrage of destructive tests. It's bent, stretched, and snapped before the final, most critical test.
We have to cool down the specimens to minus 20 degrees. Where's the beer? Now we see how much energy the weld can absorb when you try to break it in two. Yeah. At the beginning, the test specimen looks like this. And after we hit it with this big hammer here, they often look like this. And then we can measure how much energy it takes to break it. If it's too little energy to break it, then it's not strong enough. We don't want brittle metal because then this ship will crack up and will divide in two.
The test weld passes, convincing Peter the real welds will hold out.
Not as expected. Yeah.
With the help of the robots, the yard gradually claw back the lost time, welding a further 7 blocks together over the next 27 days. Bringing the build back on schedule.
Last week it was a little worried about the process because according to the old schedule it was 1 week behind. Quite confident now. The progress looking very good.
So good that the Triple-E is fast outgrowing her home. Until now, she's been sharing Dock 2 with 2 smaller vessels. But with them now complete, the time has come to remove them, giving the Triple-E more room to grow. A process called semi-launching.
Like so that's the refloating, semi-launching.
Get the semi-launch right, and the team can complete the build. Get it wrong, and the Triple-E could sink before she's finished.
We would put ballast in the forward end of the tanks, so we have an even floating out, the even keel.
The success of the semi-launch hinges on a novel invention built into the dry dock itself. Throughout the build, access in and out of Dock 2 is controlled by a simple but clever device called a caisson gate. A floating steel box, strong enough to keep millions of cubic tons of seawater at bay. A system of ballast tanks is hidden inside the gate's steel walls. Once the dock is filled with water, workers empty the tanks in the gate, so it rises. Then, they tow the gate away. To reseal the dock, they repeat the process in reverse. As they fill the gate's tanks with water, it sinks back into position, allowing them to pump the dock dry again. Inside the gate's control room, Peter makes his final checks.
You can control the amount of ballast in the tanks. There's a valve in both ends of it. So you can open these and then you can fill up the dock. And they're all closed. I can see. That's good because otherwise it'll be fairly wet in the dock. Here you can see the big valves in the dock gate. They open these valves and then the dock will be flooded. Very easy, gravity.
With everything ready, the crew opens the valves. Flooding Dock 2 with 2,500 cubic meters of water per minute. The Triple-E floats off her supports for the very first time. The only thing stopping the half-finished hull from filling with water and sinking the ship is a thin wall of steel called a bulkhead. For Peter and the crew,
Sometimes there is a mistake, there is not closed, there is a hole. Sometimes the sink that's open, but sometimes it happens like that.
the team must check everything. Nothing can be left to chance.
선제에 터치되는 게 잘못된 게 있는지 이런 거 확인도 하고 지금 같은 경우 들어가서 물 속에 지금 태그라인을 해체해주고 그런 일들을 하고 왔습니다.
After an anxious few minutes, the diver gives the all clear for them to open the gate. It takes 2 tugboats to pull out the half-finished hull. Clearing the way for the removal of the other vessels. Finally, the Triple-E is towed back into her new position. Before the dock is once again sealed shut and pumped dry. It's an important milestone for Peter.
I'm very pleased, actually. It looks good, it's well done, and it's on time.
11 weeks into the build, the Triple-E's hull is more than half complete. But the furious pace is taking its toll on relations with the yard.
We had some arguments about the schedules. We thought they were behind schedule. They claimed they're not behind schedule.
Site manager Soren has a plan to rebuild bridges.
Tonight, we have invited the production partner out for a little dinner, together with some beers and soju, so we can get to know each other far better than we have done previously.
At Okpo's premier barbecue restaurant, the serious business of building the world's biggest container ship is put on hold, as the Danish and South Korean crews settle down to some serious bonding.
What we hope to gain tonight is that we have an honest and open dialogue. No more beers. I'll keep a distance because I know I'll be very sorry the next morning I've done too much. Cheers to the game. Now getting drunk again or what?
That is the engineer's hand.
Is that because it's dirty? No, that's not an engineer's hand. Too soft. They're not different when we are getting to know them and they know us. Engineer's hand?
Engineer's hand.
Yeah, that was better, yes.
Cheers. By the end of the evening, Soren is satisfied he's achieved his goal.
I would say, in a sense, we would call it bridge building. Yes, so we start from one end each, so we would meet in the middle.
Okpo, South Korea. And almost 100 days into the build, the hull of Maersk Line's record-breaking new container ship, the Triple-E, is almost complete. With 23 mega blocks welded together, there's just one last piece to install. The Triple-E's enormous curved bow. When finished, the Triple-E will be able to carry 2,500 more containers than her nearest rival. To maximise efficiency, Our hull needs to be able to cut through the water with as little drag as possible.
The philosophy behind the TRtrebuC is that we're trying to maximize the capacity of containers on board, and we're trying to minimize the fuel consumption used to transport these containers.
Reduces drag and the amount of fuel the ship needs to keep moving.
Of course, it's a little bit more tricky to build this bulbous bow than building a normal flat side shell piece because you have lots of curved panels on it.
Building such a complex shape from solid steel is no mean feat. To help them, the yard has two huge steel bending machines, but they can only curve the sheets one way. And the 54 steel plates making up the bow each have multiple curves. The solution? Bend the steel by hand, using hot gas and cold water.
Just after heating, they cool by water, so it can make that the shrinkage by the cooling down, so it can make a curve like this.
Workers rapidly heat and cool specific areas of the plates to produce the bespoke shapes they need for the bow.
To make the bend of the plate manually, they are using a very skilled persons. Yeah, we can say that they are artists to make a curve. Yeah.
Mr. O has been manually bending steel at the yard for almost 30 years.
똑같죠. 사람이나 이 철판은 이것도 아까도 전에 말씀드렸지만 이 철판 자체도 세포식으로 되고 우리가 깨끗하게 매끈하게 되지만 아니면 철판은 인간 이 피부 세포와 똑같은 거예요. 자기가 그런 게는 자기가 속으로 일을 할 때는 내가 이거하고 친하다 생각을 해가면 좀 술게 될 거고 내 기분 나쁘다 한 잔부터 여기다 그러면 안 될 수도 있는 거죠. 그게 안 맞을 수가 없는 게 맞아요. 여기서 플러스 마이너스 2mm밖에 안 주거든요. 그런데 안 맞을 수는 없는 거죠. 가서는 정확하게 맞아요. 여기 가면 여기서 다 확인을 해가 나가야 되기 때문에 거기 가서 안 맞진 않아요.
It's the hardest job. Yeah, if it is a thicker plate, it will be harder. It takes a long time.
Workers weld the curved plates together in the assembly shop.
It's the most hard part of the vessel to build in shape-wise. It's not so hard to weld together because it's fairly thin steel, but it's hard to build.
Working from the ground up, the team assembles a frame around which they wrap the bow's curved cladding. Until finally, it's move time.
They are about to put the bulbous bow in the dock. The bulbous bow is the last part of this big 3D puzzle that should be supposed to be a ship when it's finished.
Almost 100 days after work first began, the crew welds the last block of the TRtrebuC's huge hull into place.
It's a big moment for the whole people because then their major job is finished. The vessel is welded together, hopefully, properly, and it floats, yes.
Ship number 4250, the first of Maersk Line's new breed of mega container ships, the TRtrebuC takes her first major step towards completion.
The hull is complete now. This is the big day of the TRtrebuC.
Vessel will probably go out and have a very, very good dinner, and maybe 1 or 2 or more beers.
But the mission is far from over. Next time.
Standard inspection record.
Tempers flare.
This is not on. What is going on here? I was told Thursday we put in the propeller on. Yes.
And machines run riot. As the team build and install the colossal